Jubilant. And in Chicago, more than 1 million sing and dance in the streets in the biggest celebration the Windy City has ever seen. Joy is...
It was 1945 and the war had finally come to an end. The enemy had been defeated in Europe and in the Pacific, and the world was at peace. But, like it or not, the Cold War had begun. And as the Western Allies watched cutting-edge Soviet heavy tanks parade around Berlin, I'm sure a panic must have set in. Their new enemy had weapons that they could not stop. This would lead to the development of some of the most impressive tank designs in history. Steel behemoths with huge 120mm guns. But these beasts were soon obsolete, and faded into relative obscurity. This is the story of America's last heavy tank, the M103. By the end of the war, the Americans had been working on their own series of heavy tanks. The T-29, T-30 and T-34 were monstrous vehicles, all using a lengthened, up-armoured M26 chassis with a new turret and bigger guns. These had originally been designed to counter the Tiger II and Jagdtiger, but after the war ended, these 70-ton tanks were deemed just too heavy to be operated by modern military, and were shelved in 1947. However, the designs did have their merits. If there was a way to make them slightly lighter and retain the powerful gun, they could still deal with even the newest Soviet heavies like the IS-3 and IS-4, and so began the T-43 program. T-43 would take the T-34 and shorten it, reduce the weight from 70 tons down to 58, reduce the crew from 6 to 4, and lighten the 120mm main gun. You can see here a very early mock-up of T-43, complete with side machine gun blisters. This model uses the same angular armour as seen on the T-34, but further developments of T-43 concluded that an elliptical hull would be better, providing better protection for less weight. It was at this point that an important decision had to be made. A new technology had emerged, the autoloader. Would America's next heavy tank utilise one? Not this time. The T-43 project would proceed with manual loading. Autoloaders would be explored using a vehicle based on the T-43 hull, but mounting a radically different turret. This weird tank and its weirder, lighter brother will more than likely be the topic of my next video, so make sure to subscribe down below if you'd like to see that. In June 1950, the short-lived post-war peace was shattered, and the Korean peninsula was consumed by war. A war that could very easily have erupted into a full-scale conflict between East and West. America was understandably very concerned. The vehicles they deployed in Korea were mostly World War II vintage, M4s and M26s with some newer M46 patents sprinkled in. If the Soviets had arrived with their new heavies, it would not have painted a pretty picture. Recently declassified documents revealed that as a result of this concern, 6 pilot vehicles and 300 production T-43s were ordered, and the first tank was completed in June 1951. The hope was that these vehicles would be able to go to Korea, and the whole program was a little rushed as a result. The first pilot can be seen here, serial number 1. T-43, despite being the lightweight option when compared to T-34, was still a massive vehicle, just over 60 metric tons. The two-piece cast hull was welded along this front seam, with the driver sitting in the middle. The turret was a single cast piece, mounting an impressive 120mm main gun. In the rear of the vehicle was a Continental V12 engine, providing 810 horsepower and giving the T-43 decent mobility for such a heavy tank. The turret was huge, not only to incorporate the massive gun, but also 4 crew members. The commander sat at the rear, looking through the central cupola. Beside him was the gunner. You can see the gunner's position in this image, with the T-43 having a bulge in the bottom of the turret to give him space. In front of them were the 2 loaders, bringing the crew total to 5. The turret also mounted a large M15 coincidence rangefinder, mounted inside these bulges on the side of the turret. The 300 production vehicles were made the T-43E1 standard, which eliminated the pistol port, the side ladder, and had a slightly more powerful main gun, among other things. This first production batch was completed during 1953 and 1954, and testing began in May 53. And many issues were quickly discovered. The turret and gun controls were far below standard. This was likely a result of the M103's main gun being adapted from an anti-aircraft gun, and the electro-hydraulic turret system being brought across from a US Navy AA mounting, which tankers had no experience with. The 120mm ammunition had glaring accuracy issues and was so erratic that the crews could not zero their main gun. The back of the turret, where the commander and gunner sat, was situated directly above the main engine exhaust, which would heat the steel under their positions to ridiculous temperatures. The engine was unreliable and absolutely guzzled fuel, and as a result the T-43E1 only had a range of 80 miles or 130 kilometers. In total, 98 modifications were implemented on the vehicle, solving most of these issues to some extent. The ammunition was modified, the engine was tweaked, the exhausts were fitted with deflectors, but the gun controls still weren't ideal. But it was satisfactory, and on the 26th of April 1956, the T-43E1 received its formal designation as a 120mm gun combat tank M103. This video is sponsored by War Thunder. Play the M103 heavy tank alongside more than 2,000 other tanks, planes, ships and helicopters in combined arms PvP warfare. War Thunder is the biggest and most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, and each of these vehicles is meticulously detailed and modelled down to individual components, providing an incredibly realistic and immersive experience whether you're in a Spitfire cockpit or the commander's hatch of a T-72. My favourite vehicle is the M4 Sherman with a 76mm gun. Taking out Tigers and Panthers never gets old, especially when I'm earning research points to unlock my next vehicle. The 4K resolution graphics are stunning, the sound effects pack a punch, and even the menu music creates a great atmosphere as you customise your vehicle to make it uniquely yours, using hundreds of decals, camouflage schemes and 3D decorations. And you can play for free right now on PC, Xbox Series X and S, and PlayStation 5. If you sign up with my link, you even get a large free bonus pack full of premium vehicles, premium account time, boosters and more. The M103 was deployed in Europe in January 1958 with the 899th Tank Battalion, joining its British counterpart, the FV-214 Conqueror, in West Germany. If the Cold War ever went hot, M103s and Conquerors would have been tasked with holding back the flood of Soviet armour, providing heavy fire support to the lighter and more mobile Centurions and M48s operating alongside them. M103 could certainly deal some damage with its 120mm gun. It was capable of penetrating 221mm, or 8.7 inches, of sloped armour at 1,000 yards, and 196mm at 2,000 yards. This was more than enough to carve through any Soviet vehicle of the time. M103 was by no means a glass cannon, however, and had an impressive armour layout of its own. The nose of the tank, created from two welded pieces of cast steel, was protected by 4.5 inches of armour angled at around 60 degrees, while also curving around the driver's position. The very front of the nose, where these two plates meet, is protected by 10 inches of steel. The turret is similarly protected. The very front is around 160mm of steel, decreasing to 140, then 107, and then to 80 as the turret tapers towards the rear. The side armour of both the hull and the turret is a weak point though, with the side of the hull only being 50mm thick, and the turret's 80mm not offering much protection at all from a side-on shot. This armour profile speaks volumes about the M103's role in NATO doctrine, that of a long-range fire support vehicle, or at a push, a frontal assault tank. If it was being shot from the side, something had gone very badly wrong. There was still plenty of room for improvement, especially to the turret. The M103A1 upgrade in July 1959 would see the gunner move forward to the right of the main gun, and the turret was, finally, fitted with a turret basket. The commander's 50caliber machine gun was now placed on a standard AA mount rather than a remote operated mounting of the earlier vehicles. The Army actually had little interest in the A1, but the US Marine Corps authorised funds to upgrade 219 M103s to A1 standard, as the United States' primary user of the M103. By 1963, the USMC was the only user of the M103, with the Army returning all of its loaned vehicles. The Army had clearly lost faith, but the heavy tank concept still made sense to the Marine Corps. If you can only fit, say, 2 tanks on a landing ship, you want them to be the toughest and most powerful vehicles possible. Space and volume were more critical on ships than raw mass alone, so a 65-ton tank still fit into the Marines' doctrine. It was around this time the revolutionary M60 Patton entered service with the Army, using a powerful new diesel engine, and the Marines decided that the M103 would be able to seriously benefit by integrating this power pack. The Army would have its M60s, while the Marines would use upgraded M103s and M48s. The MBT-70 was about to replace all of these vehicles anyway, so there was no point in adopting the M60. The M103A2 upgrade not only converted the vehicle to diesel, but offered a large boost to range and meant repairs and maintenance were much easier. The A2 package also included a new rangefinder, an upgrade to the ballistics computer, a Xenon searchlight, and tweaks to the road wheels and running gear. At this point, the fate of the M103 was more or less sealed, not because of the fault with the vehicle itself, but with the concept of heavy tanks as a whole. The British Conqueror and Soviet IS series were in the same boat. The arrival of the main battle tank in the late 50s, early 60s had changed the entire landscape of armoured warfare and left no room for heavy tanks. Not only were vehicles like the Centurion and M60 extremely capable and could do nearly everything the M103 could do, but the one job the M103 was designed for, destroying Soviet heavies, almost didn't exist anymore, as the USSR was also transitioning to main battle tanks. There was just no point in fielding a 65-ton, 120mm armed tank just for it to destroy a T-55, something the M60 could already do. With the controversial cancellation of the MBT-70 in 1971, it was evident that the Marines would need to replace the aging M48 with the M60 anyway, so it made sense to get rid of the M103s as it did so, and the tank was declared obsolete in 1972. The Marines' M103A2s would never leave American soil, deemed unsuitable for the conflict in Vietnam. They would leave the American mainland, however, with a platoon of vehicles deployed to protect Guantanamo Bay on a rotating basis until the early 70s. The last M103 was phased out by 1974. There was one variant of the vehicle still in service, however. the M51 Heavy Recovery Vehicle. Turns out, if you're designing one of the heaviest vehicles ever, it is also prudent to design a way to move them around. The M51 was designed on the M103 chassis, removing the turret and placing a winch in front of the vehicle. The rear of the M51 is dominated by its massive 30-ton capacity crane. The Army never actually used the M51, presumably due to the lack of familiarity with the M103 chassis, but the Marines loved it, and did actually take it to Vietnam to use with their M48s. It was phased out of service by 1977, the last gasp of America's last heavy tank. Thanks again to War Thunder for supporting the channel and sponsoring this video. If you haven't already, you can sign up now on PC, Xbox Series X and S, or PlayStation 5 using the link in the description to get all kinds of goodies in your free bonus pack. Join me and millions of other players on the definitive vehicle combat game. You can also join the Red Wrench Discord if you want to talk tanks, War Thunder, or just have a chat and ask me some questions. We've got a nice little community going on, and I love to share behind the scenes photos and get ideas for new videos. If you enjoyed this video, please do hit that like button, and if you want to see the T57, T69 video, then do subscribe down below. I'll see you then.